Well, good morning. It's time once again for the House Whisperer Show on WWDB Talk 860. I'm Barry Reisman, inviting you to stay tuned for expert advice about maintaining your house from the roof to the basement and underline basement, because we're going to be talking about basements. We did last week. Jack Milne was here and he talked about basements, but there's much more to cover. So we're going to do more basements today. Professional home inspector Jack Milne, who tells us that every house has a story. I guess every basement has a story too. Good morning, Jack. How you doing today?
Good morning, Barry. Fantastic, sir, and thank you for asking. Yeah, basements take on their own unique personality. I remember, God, I think one of the last basements I did was in the very early 80s before I shifted careers. And this client wanted a nautical theme. And, he had, a lot of, boats and anchors and portholes and everything like that. And so going with that concept, when we finished his basement, he had like sailing rope around his posts. We actually used a porthole embedded in the wall, but behind it was a fish tank. Yeah. So it looked like you were looking underwater into this fish tank. It's so creative. And the other thing he did is when we made his bar top, he had a lot of, I guess I would call them doubloons, and or older Spanish coins or whatever he had, and we resonated them so that his bar top was crystal clear, but his coins were embedded within the resin. So it was just so unique. And that, again, is one thing about basements, is everyone can have one that's a little bit different. And if you think about it, you're almost adding up to 25 to 35% more to your home, because a lot of times your basement is the same square footage of your first and second floor. So that's why it kind of costs a bunch to go ahead and finish it as you like. So as in the beginning here, as I like to say with my welcome, fall is almost upon us, and I think the best projects to do is when it's already dark out early, the nights are getting cold, and so what can we do inside, to get a project finished? And it's not an easy task to do a basement. And as you can tell from part one, where we talked about the layout, it can take 4 to 5, 6 months to put your dreams into reality and obtain those permits and those bank loans, so that you can finally get the contractor to get started. We talked about last week about the architect, choosing the right general contractor, see what works and what doesn't work, and you have to realize the final costs. And then once you've done all that, now again we get started. So today's topic, really came from last week's show, and it was from Jose from Windcode, who had a 25-year-old home, and he asked me how to build him a better basement. So Jose, it's not too often that I tell my listeners that this is your second show, but like I said, I've got so much information here that I actually had to have a sequel. So before we start, again, I want to thank my sponsors. And so let me run through them real quick for you. I'm going to start first, actually. Tri-County Inspection Company. I'm always the last today. I want to be first. So 215-295-2030. In 2015, we're actually celebrating our 30th anniversary of being in business. I'm pretty excited about that. 610-296-2004 is our Delaware County phone number. 610-346-7880 is our Lehigh Valley number. BrainFleshGear.com, anything eclectic you need in clothing, sweatshirts, T-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, anything. They can make them for you with your own ideas and concepts. It's a nice place to make it your own. Pest Blaster. Again, within the next few weeks, I want to have Jim Pellegrini on the line. I want to talk about critters. But they also do get involved with radon, mold, wood-destroying insects, as well as pest removal. So their number is 215-295-5555. Burr Exterminating for you folks down there in Glen Olden, Pennsylvania, or really anywhere towards the western part of Montgomery County, Philadelphia, even up to Bucks County. They do get out there, and their number is 610-586-5640. Again, Bucksmont Inspections, Rob Bowie, excellent when it comes to anything dealing with on-site sewage systems. More for you country folks way up there or out there, but they're very good at what they do. And Rob is actually a sewage control officer, so credentials, you can't get better. So he's at 215-669-4213. So again, as to a little bit of background, a few weeks ago I got an email from Jose, who has his 25-year-old basement or home and wants his basement finished. So for Jose, let's get this show started. And for all my listeners, you can always backtrack and go to thehousewhisperershow.com for previous episodes. I always ask you to email me at thehousewhisperershow@gmail.com. And then, of course, podcasts are always neat, and they're available at www.dbam.com. So, here we go. The permits are issued, and proudly taped on your front window. The neighbors are curious. The 20 to a 30-yard dumpster arrives at 7 a.m. You hear the truck. You're not quite prepared. So you steer them into your driveway using hand signals you've never used before. But the truck, it didn't hit your house and it didn't kill your shrubs. But the dumpster is bigger than you thought. And, will the contractors or maybe even the neighbors actually fill this thing? It's always funny how many neighbors come by and say, if you have a little more space, do you think I can put a couple things in there too? And I always tell them, wait till I'm done, and then it's yours. So, the one thing is you have to make sure that when you order your dumpster, they may ask you, how long do you need it? I always tell my dumpster folks a month. If you need it for 2 weeks, so what? If you need it for 3 weeks and they're done, that's okay. But I tell them a month because it's not a weekend project. The other thing I would ask is that make sure that they put some type of wood, either plywood or 2x8, 2x10, just pieces under the wheels, because depending on the time of year and with the weight of the dumpster, that can put depressions in your asphalt. So make sure they plan that accordingly. The other thing you need to know as to your rules of engagement is how filled can you make it? A lot of times now, with especially the highways as they are, they can't have it overfilled. And if you overfill it, they may charge you more. Or if you fill it completely, you may need a second one. So this is a conversation that you want to have with your contractor before you order the dumpster. Dumpsters run roughly $600 to $800, depending on the capacity. Now, if you've got stuff in your basement, by now I hope you got it out, okay? Because you don't want your contractors that you may be paying up to $1,000 a day become movers. So I would have thought that by now, with especially the excitement coming, that you had a chance to get rid of the old papers and the old clothing and books and toys that aren't being used anymore, and that you've donated them to the special folks, if it's Goodwill or Salvation Army or even Homes for Habitat for Humanity. So you have to make sure that, again, you have this clean palette of which to work with. So you have to make sure that you're prepared. The contractor shows up at 7:30 sharp, and the kids aren't quite ready for the school bus. Hubby left at 6:30, and as the bride, you may be in charge. So all of a sudden, you kind of feel like the Keystone Cops, where you're directing both the kids and the contractors as to where to go. So within a half hour of the contractor showing up, the sound of demolition is ringing throughout the house. So anything old and in the way will be removed. the mechanics are trying to use the shortest and closest route to the dumpster. And I kind of assimilate it like ants. You know, they move in and they move out with a steady progression. And even though you're doing your best, dust will happen. There's absolutely no doubt about it. All I can tell my clients when I was a general contractor was to smile and bear with it. You know, and you always have to think of the end result. I would not suggest following them with a Swifter or a vacuum cleaner. It will drive all of you crazy. So the dust, you know, will settle, but at some point you have to let the construction begin. So, you know, again, smile. And just make sure the contractors do lay at least some drop cloths on the floor between the basement entryway and your exit doors. Now, in today's basement, steel studs are used for what we call base and top plates and walls, so there's no more wood. And Jose, I hope you're listening, okay, because this should all have been spec'd out by the architect. And because of the potential for maybe water penetration, failed sump pumps, and mold, they're not using wood studs anymore. So screws are used instead of nails. And, you know, wood can still be used, but typically it's going to be along the ceilings to encapsulate ductwork, make up frames for your soffits, and other what I call other visual techniques. And I always suggest that the steel studs should be set at least 6 inches from all exterior walls.
On that note, we have a little break coming up, Jack. So how about if we do that and come back and talk more about basements?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, Jack Milne is here, the House Whisperer at WWDB, and more basement talk coming up right after this.
Boro Exterminating has been specializing in wood-destroying insect inspection and control for over 40 years, serving Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. All inspectors are state certified and ensure providing their clients with professional inspections and treatments. Boro not only performs conventional termite treatments, but also handles special services like historic buildings and homes with wells, creeks, or ponds. The client is assured that all treatments will be performed safely when you hire Boro to do the work. They also provide radon testing in their service area. Boro's full-time office staff is available to help you schedule an appointment. Just call 610-586-5640 or send an email request to boroinspects@verizon.net. That's 610-586-5640 or email at boroinspects@verizon.net.
Specially created t-shirts by BrainFlushGear.com offer the extreme sports enthusiast an opportunity to have a clothing line available that suits their sport. BrainFlushGear.com understands that when we get the moment where we can jump on our motorcycles, wave runners, surfboards, snowmobiles, or skateboards, it can be priceless. They offer custom artwork including silk screening, transfers, and embroidery. Speak to one of their consultants today and they'll help you create your own Brain Flush. Visit BrainFlushGear.com or email them at contact@BrainFlushGear.com.
For your septic inspection and testing needs, please consider Bucksmont Inspections. They've been serving the Bucks and Montgomery County areas for over 15 years. As members of the Pennsylvania Septic Management Association, the Pennsylvania Association of Sewage Enforcement Officers, and the Pennsylvania Association for Professional Soil Scientists, Bucksmont Inspections can inspect your existing septic system or test for your new septic system placement. Please call Rob Bowie at 215-669-4213 and say you heard their ad on the House Whisperers show.
As the temperatures gradually rise, so do the odds of all those filthy and unwanted critters invading your home like rodents, roaches, termites, and flies. Oh my! This summer, if you want to feel safe and secure from a possible creeping, crawling disaster, do yourself a favor and call the exterminating experts at Pest Blaster for all your pest control needs, including tests for radon and mold. Please visit pestblaster.com and you'll be sold. 215-295-5555.
Tri-County Inspection Company has been providing professional home inspections, commercial inspections, and historic property evaluations for over 25 years. Tri-County Inspection Company covers 13 counties, serving both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They've performed inspections for over 70,000 clients and are members of the American Society of Home Inspectors, as well as the Pennsylvania Home Inspectors Coalition. They are licensed in both Philadelphia and New Jersey. For all of your real estate transactions, call Tri-County Inspections at 215-295-2030. For their New Jersey clientele, call 856-853-4224. In PA, call 215-295-2030. In New Jersey, 856-853-4224.
And we're back with Jack, and we're in the basement, or at least we're talking about the basement. And Jack, it's time to pick up where you left off.
Well, thank you, Barry. We're talking about part 2 of finishing your basement, and we're finally getting into the exciting part of construction. But again, with construction, there's actually demolition. So that's why that dumpster came early. That's why your contractors are there. They're using their hammers, sawzall, crowbars, pry bars, everything to take out what is not necessary for the rebuild. And as I said before the break, you're going to hear sounds you haven't heard before, and sometimes even the radio is a little bit too loud. But if you have merry contractors, that's a good thing. And again, I ask that you try to stay out of their way. Because you don't know, you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to get banged by the 2x4 that's working its way up the step as you're working your way down. And again, think of that parade of ants. They're in and out, in and out, in and out. So try and stay clear. Do you want to offer them drinks? Yeah, I would. No special drinks, mind you, but have water available. I think that's always a good gracious host, as I like to say. And believe me, these guys do work up a sweat. And just, if you bring down that case of 24 bottles of water, I think that's greatly appreciated. So as I tell my folks, come down at the end of the day, okay? But if they have questions, they will seek you out. And believe me, they want to make sure they do it right the first time. So before the break, we were talking about steel studs instead of wood studs. So next is going to come insulation and what we call a plastic vapor barrier. So the insulation will go between the studs. The moisture barrier is going to go over top of the insulation, so that this way it keeps any kind of damp smells, odors, etc. out. And with basements, there's always going to be a degree of moisture, because why? You're underground. So you have to do your best to try to keep the moisture at bay. You may still need to add a dehumidifier after the project is done, but it's one miracle at a time. Now, you think you have dust, you haven't seen anything yet until they start the second means of egress. And now the masons on site, you have they're excavating the soil away from your home to expose the foundation. And they have to literally plant and bolt a Bilco entry door or foundation window. So I hate to say it, but your lawn's going to be absolutely disrupted because there's going to be a backhoe on site. So they're not going to dig this thing by hand. They're going to have a machine come in. But, time is money. So you're going to pay for it kind of one way or the other, but it's usually better to get it in sooner than later. So again, you kind of have to look at your house and look at the final result. And believe me, outside you may be raking and resodding and reseeding. You might have to actually do some reswaling to make sure that the water gets directed away from your home. And again, you're going to shake your head. I know we did agree to sign up for this, but wow, all at once? Absolutely. So on the studs, we're going to probably be putting on 4 feet of moisture-resistant drywall for the just in case. If you do have water penetration, moisture-resistant drywall is now being installed in our bathrooms and shower locations just for that reason. And do keep in mind, if you have a perimeter drain, like Jose's house, again, 25 years old, you have to make sure that before these walls are encapsulated, that the contractor cleans out the drain completely, and I'm put that in bold print, completely, because if there's any construction debris in that 1.5 inch gap, it's going to back up. And if it backs up, it can ruin a whole lot of things. So meanwhile, after the studs are up, they're going to be installing what we call plastic sleeves in the gaps between each of the studs, so that way they can run your wires. And the wires are going to be run for your future receptacle switches, which in turn are going to do hi-hat lights. They may do fluorescent bulbs, but those sleeves are very important because steel studs are sharp. And that's one of my points. Keep the kids out of the basement while the contractors are working. I mean, they're using circular saws, again, sawzalls, which are reciprocating saws. No one uses a hand saw anymore. There's going to be drills. There's going to be what we call fish. There's a lot of sharp objects in the basement. So if you have kids, it's a construction zone, folks, and treat it as such, respect it as such, and you have to keep the kids out. So once the wires are run, and they put, as I like to call it, the skins on the bones, which are the studs, you're never really going to be visiting that foundation again unless there's a problem. So, again, my suggestion is at the end of each day, you want to review the work that's completed so far and make a list to give to the contractor for the next day. And then this way you can use it as a checkoff list. And remember, they do work for you. And I ask that you don't be intimidated, and if you're not getting the satisfaction that you were hoping to get, you may have to go higher. And so if there's going to be change orders, you have to get it in writing. Because, again, there's always this point that says, well, while we're here, what if we, do this and that? And so in writing, you want to get the scope of the work. You want to get any type of material. So if it's hi-hat lights, if it's a higher-end receptacle or switch, you have to put down if it's Lutron or any other manufacturer, because that's going to be more of a time and material, and it's not going to be included in your final contract. And it should be initialed by both you, and I mean you, meaning both spouses and the contractor. So the drywall is hung on the walls, but let's talk about the ceiling. Personally, I prefer drop ceilings to drywall. And I know drywall offers a really clean finish, but access to anything in the future is denied. And if you need to, you're going to have to make access holes with panels that need to be cut in, and you can have little screw clamps and things like that. But what happens if you have an overflow of the dishwasher or the clothes washer? Now we have to cut out the drywall. We've got to patch it. We have to sand and spackle. It's got to be primed, and then the whole ceiling needs to be painted. To me, drop ceilings can be removed. They can be discarded, and they can be replaced. And they can be set aside to run gas lines, water lines, electric lines in the future. And remember, it's still downstairs, okay? And this is where all your mechanicals are, and access around the home is critical. So you can't only think now, but you always have to think about the future. So while the mason is, again, busy cutting away through your foundation walls for your Bilco entry, reviewing your plans, they now have to put a hole in the slab for your new powder room or full bathroom. And, folks, my suggestion is keep it a powder room only. I don't suggest bedrooms and basements, regardless of how many exit points there are, because fire or not, that may kill you, but there's a silent killer, and that's called carbon monoxide. So if you have a powder room, it's going to be used by the kids or for Dad, during the Eagles game, but a shower invites a bedroom. So personally, I would suggest you save the money and use it for other things. A macerator pump and pit with a pump alarm will run about $1,700, and the cost of a powder room can be another $5,000, and a lot of this all depends on the quality of the fixtures and finishes of which you choose. Washers and dryers can also be relocated. I think today it's more popular to have a washer and dryer upstairs, but again, in the planning phase, if the washer and dryer are being relocated, then a bar sink can be added downstairs because you already have the drain lines. If you need a discharge pump, again, just budget $150 for the bar sink. But again, anything can really be accomplished plumbing-wise with both a discharge or a macerator pump. Flooring, I try to keep everything waterproof. So personally, I like tile in a basement. That's what I did mine, and I love it. This way, in case there's any minor spills, they can be picked up. Carpet, if you're going to do carpet, it's got to have a very good base pad, and it's got to be moisture resistant. So you're going to be paying a little bit more for that. Carpets and spills, odors, I think are going to be more prevalent with a carpet floor over a tile floor. You could also do an engineered hardwood, and I use the term engineered because it's going to be wafered, it's going to be sandwiched, and it's far better on concrete than, say, a Bruce floor or a standard full hardwood, 5/8 to 3/4 inch wood floor. So there are a lot of options, but remember, again, always keep this in the back of your mind. You are underground. Just keep in mind that on the resale, let's talk about pricing. Budget, again, between $30,000 and $50,000. If your house goes up for sale, you're going to recoup maybe 60 to 75% of the value of the renovation. Paying the contractor should be done in stages. It needs to be fair to you, but also needs to be fair for the contractor. So I still have half a page to go, but as always, if you need me, email me at thehousewhisperershow@gmail.com. I ask that you visit previous episodes at thehousewhisperershow.com.
Always great talking to you, Jack. Always a fascinating program.
And Barry, next week, demolition versus construction.
I'm ready for it.